Hello and welcome to Trends and Dioramas. I'm your host Kaustubh Chatterjee, and today I'm going to talk about painting 1:72 scale model figures. I started this channel with my Burying the Gold project, the diorama that you see right in front of me. If you haven't seen it already, then please click on this card to find the playlist that shows all the build logs of this diorama from start to finish. Though most of the scenario making techniques are covered already, there is one important aspect of the project that I haven't talked about: painting pirate figures.
So I'll show you the techniques I use to paint these tiny 1:72 scale figures. This final leg of the series will be broken in two parts. Today I'll show you how I painted the first mate of the crew, and in part 2 that is coming up in the following weeks, I'll show you how I brought some real character out of two Airfix stock figures that you see here.
Now before we proceed, here is a gentle reminder to click that subscribe button and the bell icon so that you stay updated about the new releases. We release 3 videos every month covering various topics of model railroading, diorama building, and miniatures in general, so I'm sure you'll find them very interesting.
The very first step of painting a figure is to research the subject. I gave a number of image searches in Google to find the right color scheme for the early 18th century pirate clothing. I also found a website called Shady Isle Pirate Society, which has elaborate and historically accurate details of pirate and privateer attire of various ages. I've put a link in the description below so that you can find them easily. Pop culture references like Pirates of the Caribbean movies and Assassin's Creed Black Flag were also good references.
For this project, I used a variety of paints. I used MIG one-shot black primer to prime the plastic surface. Though this is primarily an airbrush primer, this works very well for small figure painting too. For the figure itself, I used Academy enamel paints. These are mostly used for painting military vehicles, but as we will see, they can be used very effectively to paint figures as well. I have also used certain Humbrol enamel paints, primarily for the skin colors. For some added detailing, I have used a few of my acrylic paints as and when required. For the brushes, I used a size 0 flat brush for relatively larger surfaces. For broad detailing, I used a size 0 round brush, and for really fine detailing, I used my Raphael 2x0 detail brush, which can also be considered a 000 size.
Before we start with the actual painting, one of the most important aspects of painting figures is achieving the right balance between viscosity and fluidity of the paint. It also depends on the particular part of the figure to be painted. Larger details like a coat or a shirt require the consistency of the paint to be very balanced. The general rule of thumb is that it should be a milk-like consistency. Mixing the thinner in steps using a dropper helps immensely in achieving the right consistency for the job. The first figure to paint was the first mate of the ship. Now before I start with the paint job, I want to point out that the figure has already received a thorough coat of black primer. I start with medium gray to paint the pants and the inside of the jackets, making sure all the crevices and hard-to-reach areas receive at least one coat of paint before I reach the upper layers. Next was the light brown as the base coat for the overcoat. I used a size 0 flat brush to apply it uniformly across the surface while making sure that the layers on top of the coat like the sling, the collar, and cuff remain untouched. Then came the dark brown. I used this shade to paint all leather accessories for the figure. First up was the pair of boots. Given the boots were relatively large, I continued using the size 0 flat brush. The sling on the shoulder, however, was much trickier. I used my finest 000 detail brush to paint the edges first. Once done, I painted the surface. Notice how both my hands and the fingers I use for painting support each other while I hold the figure and the brush and create one solid system. This helps me stay relaxed and eliminates shaking. Even a millimeter shake can ruin these tiny figure painting job, so I'm always extra careful. Next was the tunic. Since most of the figure is in the shades of brown so far, I decided to go with light blue for the tunic to bring some contrast. I picked up white next, and my target was the frills. Due to the position of the right hand of the figure, this actually is a very hard to reach spot, and the fact that the surrounding areas were already painted made things even harder. That's why you see me taking extra time and care to ensure that I don't mess things up by letting the paint get in the areas where I didn't want it. Enamel paints in small quantities tend to dry quickly. Here you see me add a couple of drops of thinner to the semi-dried paint so that I could continue to use the paint and not waste it. My next target was the scarves tied around the waist. Now it is hard to see when everything is painted black, but there are actually two scarves around the first mate's waist. I decided to paint the one on the bottom white and one on the top red to bring more contrast. Here I'm carefully painting the white one. Once the white one was done, I started on the red scarf. I used the bright red color so that it stands out in a rather dull color scheme. Even while painting the same area, I often rotate and flip the figure to get a different perspective, which helps me identify any areas or small cracks and crevices that I might have missed earlier. Now here's the result so far. With every layer of paint, more details get visible, making the figure look more and more like a proper pirate. Next, I picked up the Academy Roof Brown, which looks very much like a mahogany polish. I started painting the spyglass with this shade. Finally, it was time for the real transformation, adding the skin color to bring this figure to life. I used Humbrol Flesh Matte to paint the hands and the face. I always keep the skin for the last. If other colors accidentally gets to the clothes, it is possible to hide it, but it is very difficult to hide rogue paint blotch on the skin job. Then I picked up my acrylic yellow ochre for the hair. I wanted to give a blonde effect to this figure, and yellow ochre is the best suited for the scale. However, since I didn't have that color in enamel, I had to go for acrylic. I painted the hair using my trusted 000 size detail brush. The next color was the Academy Sinai Gray for the hat. I started painting the edge of the hair and the hat with my detail brush. Once the hard part was done, I just painted the top of the hat in the same color. Now it's time for some effects. First, I mixed light gray and light brown to create a dust highlight. Then I dried the brush about 90% before starting to dry brush on the entire figure. This toned down the striking edges and blended everything to give the clothes a dirty, used, but not yet torn look, something suitable for a first mate of a pirate crew. After dry brushing, I put the finishing touches wherever needed. Next, I took a little bit of black paint and painted the lens end of the spyglass. Once the black paint dried, I took self-leveling Ultra Gloss Gel Medium and added a tiny drop in place of the lens. This gel dries shiny clear, and with the black paint behind it, it would simulate the objective of the spyglass. The last bit of detailing was done using golden acrylic paint. I used my ultra-fine detail brush to paint the coat buttons golden to add some extra depth to the figure. Again, notice how both my hands support each other to reduce shake when I do these extremely fine works. The final step was to seal everything down with a generous coat of dull coat lacquer. This ensures that not only those uncharacteristic shine from clothes are gone and everything looks uniform, but also ensures that paint job is well protected. I used the size 0 flat brush and applied generously throughout the figure. Here is the final result after the figure was placed on the diorama. Thank you for watching, and I hope you enjoyed this tutorial. Give this video a like and let me know about your experience of painting scale model figures in the comments below. And of course, don't forget to hit that subscribe button so that you can watch part 2 of this video as soon as it's released.